Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today on the podcast, we're in a little town in Ontario with a runner who was at the top of his game, top of the country in the mid-70s, went to a famous American university, part of a historic time at Villanova. Today on the podcast, welcome, Ed Takacs. Hi, Ed. Ed, let's talk about your origin story as an athlete. Where'd you grow up, and how was competitive sports and organized sports there in Canada?
I'm from a town called Brantford, Ontario, of course, in Canada. My involvement in track and running cross country evolved without deliberation in high school. It's just something that I think everybody in high school just falls into. In my case, I recollect that I was interested in rugby, but once you get tackled once or twice or three times and you get back up, you got a lot of bruises. So I naturally gravitated to running. It's just something that naturally evolved. It worked for me. It really worked for me. Was there a deliberate plan? Probably not. Did it work out well? Unequivocally, yes.
What year did you first join an organized running team?
I started in grade 9. As you know, we had 5 years of high school at the time, right up to grade 13.
What year was grade 9 for you?
Grade 9 would have been probably 1968, given the 5th year that we had at the time that they have since eliminated. And every year, I got more and more involved.
What was your awareness of running as a sport? So 68, give up on rugby, and the Olympics had just happened. Mm-hmm. Canada has some success. What were you in terms of a fan or paying attention to the running world when you started?
To be quite frank, not a lot. I just did what I did. I enjoyed my time on the cross-country team in the fall, and I really enjoyed my ensuing seasons in track over those years. And it just evolved. And as I got better and better, I think back when I first started out, I was reading everybody's number as I was always behind them. By graduation, everybody was reading my number. Every meet, they were reading my number. That's how it just naturally evolved for me.
How did your self-image change and confidence over those years? And when was your first success that you went from, I do this because I like it, to I'm good at this, and who knows where this goes? How'd that evolve?
Good question. In the fall, I went from middle of the pack to the top 10, top 20 in cross country, to the point where I then, in my last year, I won the races. My year before, I would come in the top 2 or 3 all the time. So it changed naturally that way, even to the point then of running track under coaching. I went from placing in the top 3, making the top finals, to actually winning the half mile, or the 800, 880 at the time for high school in the provincials, which was a very notable task, put it that way.
Yeah, and Ontario is a kind of one of the main provincial championships, one of the bigger population provinces, so equivalent for people in the States, the state championship of the big state. What about the coaching? What did you have for equipment? What did you have for workouts and coaching expertise through that time?
Equipment limited. Those were the days, my friend. Those were the days. We had a pair of shorts at that time, a jock strap, a t-shirt. That was it. Had a pair of running shoes, and they were very evolved running shoes, just a pair of rubber on your soles. That was it. Those were the days. I can tell you know exactly what I mean. It was very limited. It was to the point where we would borrow each other's spikes. That's what we did.
Well, we're going to jump ahead here to your winning of the provincial 800. And what about the shoes you wore for that race?
I guess it's a joke here. My shoes were like 2 sizes too big. They were borrowed, and I put them on before the race because, again, we swapped shoes between and among the team. You don't think about what's on your feet. You think about what you've done. You focus. You do what you got to do, and you make it happen. And I won the provincials. As you alluded to earlier, Matthew, if you win in Ontario, it's considered an exponential win, shall I say, versus an additional win if you were in one of the other provinces, if I could put it that way. It was a very credible, solid win.
What do you remember about the race and your coaching in terms of strategy? Okay, the equipment's so limited.
Yeah.
You borrowed shoes at the provincial championship. But what about the coaching getting there, the mileage and your training and tactics or strategy planning?
Yeah, the coaching was twofold. It was largely the head of the phys ed department going back years ago now. That person was the mentor for all high school sports. But then I also joined the Brantford Track and Field Club, and we always worked together every Tuesday, every Thursday, twice a week on the track. And if it wasn't open, we would jump the fence to get onto the track. Again, these are the type of things that we did. The innocence of the period, the real innocence, the sometimes the halcyon days of track. But they coached me very well. And to answer to your question, what I recall in winning the provincials is, let others do the work. You come through at the 400 in a comfortable third, got to have a solid third. On the back straight, you strategize your further position. If you can, move up into that second place. When you're coming off the turn, go for broke. And that's what happened. Broke and I won.
Yeah. This is definitely not about me, but I ran Masters Track and I'm just reliving my race and I didn't know what I was going to do. And I actually ran in tennis shoes stupidly, but I did that same strategy. I had learned something in 40 years, how to run a race. And it worked out well.
Yeah.
I want to talk about two things about this. One is your relationship with your teammates as you excelled and passed them, and also the track club. In that era, a lot of places, it really was the track clubs rather than the schools that carried running through to the community and widely. How did people adjust to you and you adjust to the team as you began to excel? How did you manage that? And what about running with those elder runners and people from outside your school?
Yeah. I would say that I was at the time, and we evolved in our personality and character as we get older, but I was somewhat quiet. I just did what I did. Probably the athletes looked at me more than I probably looked at them, and I didn't even know that they were looking at me. I didn't even know it. I was wet behind the ears. Ed, you do what you got to do. You have a good workout, and just you make it happen. We were I would say, a very good group. We did what we did. Some losses, some wins, some injuries. We all get injuries. Over that period of 3 or 4 years, we all got better. In my case, I'm humbled because I was fortunate to have won the 800 for Ontario. And it was something that was a pivotal win, a pivotal event in my life, because my whole life trajectory changed. It completely changed.
We'll talk about that next, but the club, what was the makeup of the Brantford Track Club in terms of who you were doing workouts then while you were still in school?
Starting with the coach, in my opinion, was very good. He was a British background. He followed all the great runners at the time, Hill and the boys, all of those guys, and he saw some talent among the athletes, and he trained us. And the people that I worked out with was his son, who eventually went to Western Kentucky, had a scholarship also, and his other son, along with a few other key athletes at the time. It was not a huge club. It was a smaller club.
What was your thinking then as a student? How'd you do in school? And when did you start thinking, this is something I'm going to do onward? And what's the world of running? And how did you get to Villanova?
A very good question. I never thought of this, Matt, to be very frank with you, until I won the provincials. Before that, it's something that I was interested in. It was something that I liked, something that I had a passion for, something that I could do well. After I won the 800, in the time I won it in, my high school coach got in touch with a few of the universities. I'm going to say American universities. They in turn got in touch with me, and that's where it all changed. One event, one time, one day. It was just a very different trajectory for me.
Who were some of the schools that you remember communicating with?
I believe it was East Lansing, Michigan, or University of Michigan. I believe there was Seton Hall, and of course, Villanova. Yeah.
And what did you know about any of them?
I'll answer your question. I'll maybe gently dovetail into it. Again, I didn't know a lot of them, other than Villanova had the greats like Dave Patrick, Marty LaQuarrie, whose name just reverberates and echoes in the track world. You look up and say, all I can say is wow and wow. Like they were just, and to use the French phrase again, crème de la crème. Okay. The other ones, so-so. So I had the fortune, and perhaps I can just recollect there, I got a flight ticket to go to Michigan, and I was, I could say, interviewed what they could do for me, what I could do for them. It was fine after that, and there is something to be said about being naive. I asked from here, do you mind if I, rather than going back to Canada, could I get a flight from here to Philadelphia? So I went into their track office, used their track phone, called Villanova, and I think the coach was looking at me there, thinking, what is this guy all about? And so then they took me to the airport. From there, Jack Pyra picked me up in Philly, and I went to Villanova. And it was like black and white, the juxtaposition of those two.
I don't know you. We've just met through this, but my guess is that you and Coach Pyra got along really from the beginning. Was that the case?
You're very intuitive, Matthew, very intuitive. He picked me up at the airport. We had a very charming and a very pleasant conversation en route to Mr. Elliott, also known as Jumbo's home, to be presented to him. And Jack, 3 ways to describe him: first class, and thirdly, first class. And certainly I would echo that sentiment of Jumbo, but certainly in a different way, different way.
The head coach, Jumbo Elliott, famous, well-known, lauded. What did Coach Pyra call him? You didn't call him Jumbo.
Of course not. The relationship was an absolute, unequivocal relationship of utmost respect. Mr. Elliott. And we didn't see him a real lot, but it certainly was one of respect. We never, ever called him Jumbo other than in the locker room hallway. And Jack, of course, was Mr. Pyra. Yeah. It was a very respectful relationship. You looked at them for advice, mentorship, support, guidance, etc.
That's great. And it's an environment that serves independence and people to figure out what's going on and do it. How much about relying on the teammates to figure that out as a freshman? How was adjusting to that in Villanova? Were you eligible had the rules changed? Were you eligible to run as a freshman?
Oh, yeah, I was. I could run. If I may, I'm going to take that in a double prong approach with regard to the teammates, okay? I'm just going to back up marginally, if I may. when I was at Mr. Elliott's / Jumbo's home, impressed me so much is that while I was there, and I was very shy, I was quiet, I'm this wet behind the ears Canadian, and he asked me about my family, he asked me about my interests, and he asked me about my school. I'm sure my recollection is right on here. There was not one question on track, on running, on times, on workouts. To me, this was the litmus test, the deciding factor just about that Villanova was the proper venue for me, because life is beyond the 4 gracious years gifted to us, or 6 years or 10 years or whatever. Life goes on before that. And Jumbo wholly focused on those elements that I described earlier. In addition, he introduced me to his good family, his wife, his children. And I would just say, wow, this is pretty good. So then moving from the coach, then he put me on to Kenny Schappert, who was in his 4th year as senior at Villanova. And now you ask the influence of teammates. The influence of teammates was profound. When Ken took me around the track, I remember we were walking around, and I remember this like yesterday. We were on the bend, and he looks at me and he says, "If you train with the best, you will become one of the best." And I just melted there. Quote unquote, you train with the best, you will become one of the best. I said, hey, I'm done. This is good. I went into their track office, not unlike the track office in Michigan, and I signed off a letter of intent. That's how profound an impact one person had on me, in addition to the coach, and then subsequently the teammates that I trained with and competed with. They were the best of the best. As friends.
Who was your roommate?
My roommate first year was, how should I say, a regular American, freshman year. Second year, George McKay, he was on scholarship also. We shared a room. And then the 3rd or 4th year, the pinnacle was to get into a private room in the very favored, what was Austin Hall at the time. I had a scholarship athlete also in my 2nd year. But apart from that, it was just the team.
One year, the next season after having won the provincial 880, what shoes did you get, and how did things look different?
I chuckle because when I was in my freshman year, I still had my old Puma, still the same old philosophy. I distinctly recall, and there was no intention to me to even say this, but I distinctly recall upon leaving the cafeteria, Mr. Pyra, he was also a security guard. So he was at the exit to the cafeteria, and I had taped my Pumas, the sole was coming off, with a bunch of tape. This is true. A bunch of tape, because that's what I was used to, and I didn't know any better. Mr. Pyra looked at me, and he says, "Champ, I'm going to give you what we call the number. Go up to Wayne, down the Lancaster Pike, and just, what do you think? You pick up a pair of running shoes there?" I said, "Sure, that'd be great." So I got my first pair of running shoes, and I threw my taped Pumas away.
In your freshman year in the fall, you worked out with the cross country team.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get to race varsity cross country in your freshman year?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Of course, cross country is very different than track, but you need that as a foundation, as a base, as we know. And I was just in awe at the guys that were running and competing at the time, both at Villanova and outside of Villanova. It was a great training ground for me, a great training ground.
What's your memories of the indoor-outdoor track?
We affectionately called it the boards. The boards. again, and it was an indoor track set up outdoors. When it snowed, as frequently as it did, we had to shovel it off. We had to run in spikes, pin spikes. Remember the pin spikes?
Yeah.
Because it could have been a little slippery, not all the time, but this is what we did. We shoveled it off, and the indoor outdoor track, the boards, was a incubator for success. I can put it that way. An absolute success, because if you can run in a pair of borrowed, it was wrestling tights. That's what we had. Again, it was wrestling tights. We didn't have formal gear, official gear with the big V on it. When the wrestling team was done, the other team got it. So we had wrestling tights and the boards and the wind, and Coach Jack and Jumbo in their little hut at the midway point of the boards, reading out the times. But how was it? I believe that was a precursor to real success, because when you move from the boards and being exposed to the elements into a real indoor track, how easy can easy be?
How was your mileage changed to doing that by the time you finished the boards workout and we're heading into indoor track competition? What was the impact on your body for those changing mileage demands?
Yeah. Again, I was middle distance, and I was not the type of person or athlete at the time that subscribed to 100-mile weeks. I never did a 100-mile week. Some of them were doing it. I just didn't do it. I ran, apart from the boards, when I was on the roads, it was always a fast workout. When I say a fast workout, we did a fast 5. We did a fast 3.5. We did it. That was a second workout in the morning with one of my colleagues there, one of my co-teammates, etc. One story I do recollect that I could share, of course, Don Page, and he's a double NCAA winner, 815 at one point in his very good career. I was training with him. We did the 6.5. And my only remark to him at the end is, I said very sternly, Don, this is not a race. We should not leave our races on the road. He looked back at me, didn't give me anything. He just moved right on. You know, and I can
do that. Yeah, you go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Don. He was the best. If this was a race, if it was, Don was first, I would have been second, and everybody else would have been way behind. That's how fast we were running. But it was his equilibrium. It was tougher for me. When you're training with one of your teammates, further to what was given to me when I was being recruited, when you train with the best, you become one of the best. The equilibrium at Villanova was very high, very high. And you didn't even know what you were doing because everybody was doing it. Everybody was doing it.
What did you do in the summers then, and how often did you get back home once you're at Villanova and part of the school life? How about traveling home, and what did you do in the summers?
In the summers, I continued my training, not as aggressively. I did my track workouts. I continued to work with the track club, and I also did, in most cases, physical labor, which, unbeknownst to me, helped me out without formalized training. Again, things that you do when you're in that tender, innocent age, you just do what you do. And the physical labor, I believe, really helped me out a lot.
Psychologically, you're prepared to say, I'm going to do the work. I want to be one of the best. How did that progress through your career there? I want to talk about some of the kind of not so much trash talk, but the target on Villanova because it's success. You can go back and find articles of people saying Penn State might beat Villanova this week in a dual meet, and it would be headline news. And there was quite a target. So how did you handle your personal goal setting and as a team as the ups and downs happened across that?
As you're posing that question, the first thing I think of when we were competing, especially at Penn Relays, we won every relay. And honestly, I thought it's because there was no competition. There's no competition. That's why we won. So,
Yeah.
so how do you deal with it? We did what we had to do. Myself, I just thought, being a recruit from Canada, hey, when's the hard stuff going to come? Because we won. When we went in a relay, we won the relay. When we went into the IC4As, especially at that time too, but more so now, we won. So that's what I mean. The equilibrium at Villanova was way up there. So how did I and we deal with it? We kept training with the best. We kept training with the best.
And your time drop, if people don't know your history, you ran 146
right
for the half. In 1975, I think you were the best time in the country of Canada, and it was the best time from going back a decade. Nobody had run that fast. You mentioned injuries. What were the challenges for you physically when you start getting to that level of seriously best in the country?
Everybody gets injured as a track athlete. It's unequivocal. You get injured once or twice, whatever. We all get injured. When you get injured, you're out. You talk to your coach. The coach will advise you as best as possible, medication, orthotics at the time, After I ran that race, I think there was an expectation that I would continue there, especially when this was the cusp of the Olympics. That was in 75. I ran a pre-Olympic meet as a precursor in Montreal for 76. But I never excelled beyond that 146, albeit I wish I could have. It wasn't in the cards. We all have defining times, limitations, etc. You do as best as you can, but sometimes, realistically, it doesn't work out that way. In my case, when I ran that 146, beyond the Olympic qualifying time, I was a half a second below the qualifying time, which was the fortune. The misfortune was it was 10 days too premature before the Canadian Olympic Committee was taking the times. So I was in, but I was out.
Whoa. Okay.
But this is the way track is. There's no equivocation. When you draw the line in the sand, you draw the line in the sand.
Yeah, so, it's not that way for all countries, but USA, Canada, it's on the day, performance, there's no excuses. It's not a committee vote to say, this guy's been running, this girl's been running good all year, we make it. It's the pressure is a whole different psychological thing that we can all relate to. And North American people, we're used to that. It's yeah.
Thank you for that. That's exactly what it is. And it's not the person, it's the time. You got the time, you're in, you're not in, you're out.
What'd you study?
At Villanova, I graduated with a Bachelor of Science of Business Administration, 4 very good years in the business school, Bartley Hall. I really enjoyed it, and along with the other subjects that I took also.
Let's talk about track. One of the historic things, we just talked to Jerry Boma about the book he's written about the relay success at Penn Relays of Villanova, specifically the distance medley relay. Who did you hand off to?
Oh, I'm going to be very frank with you. I do not recall.
Oh, that's great.
I don't. Yeah. Jerry has a mathematical mind. His first degree is in math. And I ran the DM sprint medley and the 4x8 there. I have the fortune of having 2 Penn Relay watches. But in terms of Matthew, who I handed off to, you know what? I would have to look in the record books to find out who I. That shows the difference between when I was there, you do it, but afterwards you sort of lose those times, handoffs, etc., because you start to move on in your life.
Yeah, and there's plenty of races. A year or two ago, talking with Jerry Lindgren, he could tell me the lap times of a 6-mile race the lap times. But that's another common thing of what do we remember? What are the things we remember, and what are the memories we remember rather than the event? If someone said to you, apart from the 146, what do you remember about that race, or what do you remember about key races where you thought, I learned something, or it went and I surprised myself, or the plan went? What are some memories of races that you do have?
Yeah. In the 146, that was at William & Mary. And
Or still the stadium record?
yeah, I believe it is. I believe it is. What I distinctly remember in that race, two of my teammates, being Kenny Shappard and Mark Belger, were in there. And there were there were some stadium, the seats on the far end, and going in on the far straight, we were all lined up. And then it was like the we didn't know who was going to be coming out after going through the stands. That is the bend. Anyhow, I came out, and things I remember is Mark Belger was boxed. I looked over to my left and I said, Mark, I'm going to move over because I wanted this to be an honest win or place, whatever. Says, Mark, let's go for it. Kenny was in a good shape. I moved over and went to the end, and it just so happened we probably were 1, 2, 3 there. And the other thing I could share with yourself, Matthew, it was Jumbo was in the stands. And I only heard this years later through his very good son. Jim shared with me that day, Jumbo predicted that I was going to be winning that race. This is how Jumbo knew us better than we knew ourselves. One of his expressions, I marginally digress here, was, you run, let me do the thinking. Just run, let me do the thinking.
That's great.
This is why he was held in such high esteem and respect. Other races, I remember a poor race I ran, and rather than beating yourself up about it, you learn from it. You learn from it. I could quite frankly share with yourself, I ran a time trial on a Wednesday on the infamous boards, or the famous boards, and I think it was probably the record for the boards. It was a 154. Right? To determine who would be running in Cobo Hall that weekend. Anyhow, further to what I said earlier, I left my race on the boards, and I did not do well in Cobo. I did not do well. And what did I learn is, hey, in French, c'est la vie. Let's not ponder this too much. You learn from it. Don't beat yourself up on it. But everybody has those circumstances. And I had the victory as I had the loss. And put them together, you learn from your gain as well as your loss.
How do you think you compared in that philosophy to your teammates? Was that also an equilibrium factor at Villanova, or some people a bit different on that?
I think the competitive edge was higher to win, in my opinion, than my philosophy. Win, 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 win. And when you see guys like Belger, Page, Coughlin, Hartnett, Jerry, bunch of great guys, ultra competitive, and we're here to win.
I want to ask you then about some alumni. Like you said, those names that you knew before you had left Canada, LaCory, and some of those that were older than you, Martin, Dave Patrick. Did you get to know them, the earlier generation of the distance medley relay that had started the streak?
I eventually got to know and do know Dave Patrick. Marty was the type of person I was just in awe, to tell you the truth. I mean, who would not be in awe as a high schooler going to an American university, and more specifically Villanova? Two very good individuals. Dave has the honor of Gary's book having his adage, touching greatness, together forever, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. And those two individuals were the people that were motivating factors for me pre-Villanova. And it's when you're there for those years, you hear the stories, and then subsequently, of course, you're keeping in touch as much as possible above track. And they were demigods on what they did and how they did it. And the performance was, just the best. And this is why Villanova has such a reputation, such a profile, has such a outlook for everybody. Here's an example. I'm in Spain 3 years ago doing a Camino, okay, just hiking, walking a Camino. I meet two Irish guys. Of course, it was a pub. We're in a pub. One thing led to another. I, of course, asked, do you know some of these great athletes, Sonia Sullivan, Eamon Coughlin, Ron Delaney, etc., right? And they said, of course we do. Of course we do. And then they had indicated it is the goal, the objective, the wish of every Irish athlete to go to Villanova. This was as recently as 5, no later than 6 years ago. Yeah, it gives me the goosebumps now.
Yeah,
because,
me too.
yeah.
I just felt that. Yeah, wow.
Everybody looks to go to Villanova, that Irish pipeline.
Yeah.
And of course, Jumbo started that, and he did an outstanding job, as well as, of course, the athletes did an outstanding job themselves.
Yeah. You're a humble guy, and I got to say, some of those great people look at your time and say, I wish I could run 146. You're no slouch, and you're a humble guy, but certainly you have a positive effect and some role modeling and people looking at that to aspire to, and you continued it. What happened when you left college in terms of what you thought you would do with running and with work in your life? Villanova and Jumbo at that time certainly has a reputation for saying, okay, it's over. We did our thing. Go have a good life.
And what you just mentioned is a segue into another vignette of my memory. My senior year, I'm in the anteroom of the track office. Jumbo looks at me and he says, "Champ, coming over. There's one other person." And asked me who it was. I don't know, okay? But there's 2 of us. And he said, "You've had a good 4 years here." In as many words, he said, "You got to move on in life. Now you have to make your life. You have to make your career. You can certainly keep running, but at some point you got to hang up those spikes, because there's a lot of more important things to do." And I was humbled by that remark. I was humbled because you're in that equivocation of, do you want to keep training? Because I was on the cusp of 4 minutes. I ran 4.9, okay? And you want to say, man, I just need less than a second, right? But again, that's the absoluteness of a good sport. He said, move on, put your playthings away, great time. So what I did, I applied to both American and Canadian universities. George Washington, I could have gone there for health administration, but I eventually elected to come back to Canada to pursue postgraduate studies in hospital administration. Concurrent with that, I joined the Toronto Olympic Club, and we ran for years afterwards. Of course, your athletic prowess declines, gets a little bit slower, but you keep at it because you're reigniting great memories and the great friends that you made, and it continues on. And at some point, years later, I just put my stuff away. I threw them in a 2x2 cube box and just sealed it. Then I pursued my career in health administration and hospital administration. Of course, then you meet the favorite person in your life, have married, you have your children, you have your mortgage, you have your financial obligations, etc., etc. Further to what dear Jumbo said, it reaches a point where you have to move on. And that's what I did.
You didn't put the watches in that box, did you?
No, I did not. One was given away, Matthew, and one is in a safety deposit box.
That's great. You did run Masters track after age 35 at some point, right?
You know what? I may have, you know what? Probably, not track. I went in 10K road races. That's what I did.
Okay.
And when I was working in Fredericton, New Brunswick, we started up a running club, the Capital City Road Runners Club, and we organized road races. I'm happy to say that running club exists today after 40 years when we started it up. So that's the type of thing. Then I morphed into coaching too a little bit.
I want to talk about your coaching philosophy, where it came from. That you were certainly the Villanova Pyra, Jumbo Elliott, significant time of your life, significant impact. You've had the good coaches before you left Canada. How did you figure out not only the technical parts of coaching, but the personal soft skill part?
I stutter here because that's exactly it. There's a relationship, then there's a physical part. And I think it's important to establish a relationship with the athletes. When I was coaching, two of my pillars were appreciation and recognition. When they ran a race, you recognize them. Didn't matter what place. And then you might have even called them champs sometime because of what Jumbo called us. And I did. I'm being a little facetious here. So there was a recognition and say, hey, we appreciate what you've done. Then that's a precursor to doing the work, the physicality component. And you got to find that equilibrium between the two. And
what did you find between you and other people? You're a distinctive type person, but you're quite thoughtful. You're quite appreciative. You have these core values that are that way. And not everybody's like that. And the competitive drive and the killer instinct sometimes is helpful. How did you find athletes' range of personality, and how did you accept the differences of that kind of stuff?
Yeah. For those that had what I saw motivation, drive, determination, focus, you just kindled it, kept kindling it. And then you always, to use those two previous words, you recognize and you reinforce with appreciation. On the flip side, for those that were not motivated, you would try as best as possible. But in my opinion, you found out eventually it was not in their DNA. And if it's not in their DNA, it's moot, so to speak. They're welcome on that you work with them, but you try to focus on those individuals that really try to make a difference to themselves and to the sport that they have adopted.
Yeah. It's interesting. One teammate of mine, a miler, my freshman year of college, became a longtime coach. And one line I remember he said is, I'll take DNA over coaching anytime. He said, the impact we can make comes from within first. And without that, the coaching really has limitations.
Exactly. Yeah. And thinking back to the genesis of my learning being Villanova, is that you always try to take that cross between Jack and Jumbo, because it was nearly a relationship of good cop, bad cop. It was beautiful. And you put it in blender and you made it work. All of those things that were, and we didn't even know it, that was ingrained in us. Don't give up. Focus. Get in the lead and stay there, or your third place position at the 400 or whatever. You just keep focused on that and you keep motivated. You got to be determined. You got to believe in those advising you, the mentorship, and you have to believe in yourself, which is a very important thing also. You got to believe in yourself and what you can do.
Did you notice parallels to this philosophy, as you said, as you left Villanova, with in the mindset that things are going to change? This is going to be a phase of my life that ends. In your life as a business person and a family person, were there things that said, boy, this is something I learned through running?
In my business career?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll start that off by saying whenever I had my challenges, in my case, I was running hospitals. You're dealing with boards, you're dealing with government, you're dealing with municipal councils. It was told to me once, and I'm going to say by my very dear friend Jerry, he looked at me right in my eye and he says, Ed, remember the 4 lappers. Just remember the 4 lappers.
Okay, that's 640 yards.
Yeah, and if you can do 11 4-lappers, and at the end of it, all you got to do is go into the locker room, which was not a locker room, and get ice and go up and down your shin, or take whatever for it. That memory was so decisive in my career in terms of doing the right thing and not giving up and keeping focused on the goal. So there was a lot of transferable skills. I'm humbled by what I had learned, and I didn't even know I was learning it at the time. But what I had learned in my 4 gifted years, and I say gifted because of the university and the team, not myself, 4 gifted years at Villanova. It changed my life. I would have had a different career path. But I learned a lot. I learned a profound amount in terms of success, in terms of relationships, in terms of culture, in terms of enduring and abiding friendships among the team. And that carries on. It really does from my 4 embryonic years.
And this might be difficult, and maybe we don't have to deal with it, but as a passage of life, and people from the 70s, people pass on. And when Jumbo was gone, and how'd that affect you, and what did that have you reflect on?
You're hitting all of the beautiful questions, and I'm going to give you another vignette to support my answer. When Jumbo died, the athletes, I'm going to say we all went back to Villanova to pay our respects at the chapel. How did it affect me? Jumbo passed on at 66, way too young, way too. If I recall correctly, he was 66. It left a big hole. It left a vacancy, a deficit, a debt in the track world. What I distinctly recall, Matthew, we're in the pews in the church, and as the priest at the time, if I recall, or the individual giving the eulogy, you know what the guys were doing? Crying.
Yeah.
They were. So that's what I remember. He had such a impact on us, and you knew that these individuals on the track, they weren't high school walk-ons. They were world champions. They were Olympians. And what you saw?
Yeah. It's a great story.
It was a loss for the track world. It was a loss for Villanova, but his enduring memory continues on for all of us that had the fortune to be with him and Jack, and by extension, his good family. I recall Kay, I recall his family, and the impact that it has made on us.
Yeah. Sometimes in this podcast, we talk about how the sport has changed and the dark side of performance enhancing drugs and the change of equipment, but I don't want to talk about any of that with you. I really don't. You're just such a pleasure to be with, and your outlook is great. You were an epitome of someone for running in the 70s, coaching afterwards, but running in the 70s. You give us a great glimpse of a historic place, a historic time, and what it was like as a shy, unassuming person who became part of the big scene. That's great. It's great to talk with you today.
Thank you. I'll just mention one thing because it's significant. It's so interesting that even today, Matthew, we continue to keep the friendships with all of our teammates. I think it's a testament to the relationship that we have shared the enduring and abiding friendships. And we move from competitiveness on the track to the diamonds and the gold of our friendships. This is 50 years later. So it's a testament to something that was a good embryonic time in our lives. It really is.
And that's the thing, I think, one more thing that just rings true. At my little school in Western Pennsylvania, we had a Sports Hall of Fame celebration. We inducted someone who was at the 84 Olympics in decathlon, and we had a reunion event then. And it's one of those things with the get together of people, and you have several years across a graduating senior and a freshman, and then the people that are freshmen that you've got 6-7 years there of really close tied relationships. And it seems you saw them a month ago.
Exactly. And as you say that, if I could add perhaps some color to that, when the boys, we call ourselves, the boys get together at the Penn Relays, essentially every year, I think it's inappropriate to say it's just a get together. It's a reunion. You know what it is? It's nearly a pilgrimage for everybody to come together and to reconnect and find out how our times then got faster afterwards as we enjoy our favorite beverage and all the good stories that keep going. But our get together with the boys at the Penn Relays is just spectacular. It's a really nice reunion for everybody. It really is.
Yeah, it's an institution that the whole world's aware of. I love that story about your meeting up on the Camino with people from Ireland to have that touch. Yeah. People that never crossed the Atlantic have a picture in their mind and their own stories and memories. Yeah.
That's right. And that's the focus. That's their wish. It's the wish of every athlete to go across the big pond, and more specifically to that small private university that has done exceedingly well in more than track at Villanova.
As a naturalized Canadian, I want to thank you for everything you've done for healthcare and administration and business and success in Canada too. And thank you for your time and the stories, and congratulations on just your spectacular career.
Thank you very much. And I echo your sentiment. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share these very dated and belated memories, but they're lasting. All the best to you, Matthew. Thank you very much. You take care.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. See you. Bye-bye.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed.
I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.